It's this device right here in my hand, which is called the RPG2, and today we're not going to procrastinate at all. Let's directly open the box and take a look at what the situation is with this latest machine, the RPG2 from Shadia. We can see that Shadia's packaging doesn't have any plastic wrap. You can simply peel it open like this. Additionally, the packaging also thoughtfully includes a tempered glass screen protector as a complimentary item. It appears there are no other accessories inside. I found the certificate of conformity. It doesn't specify the month of manufacture. Oh, it indicates October, so it's likely a very recently produced unit. Now everyone, please take a look at the color I've chosen for my device. What do you think? Ta-da! Wow, this shade of purple is absolutely fantastic, truly impressive. Everyone, take a look at this device. How do you like the purple? The hand feel when you hold it is genuinely quite nice, I must say. And speaking of the joystick, this one is noticeably taller than the joystick on that other device. You'll definitely perceive the height difference, it really will. It feels distinctly taller, and as for the dimensions of this joystick, it's quite a moderate or standard size. It also utilizes a Hall effect mechanism for the joystick, and the trigger buttons are linear triggers. Nevertheless, my impression is that these specific trigger buttons, when juxtaposed with the ones we've previously reviewed on the Weibo Mini, it feels a bit stiffer. I constantly feel that the tension on the left and right triggers is, just, it's not the same. I perceive the right one to be slightly stiffer, while the left one feels softer. This difference in tactile feedback is quite noticeable. The right one is indeed firmer. You can distinctly sense that the right one is harder. It feels quite stiff. Now, as for the shoulder buttons, they utilize micro switches, so you can distinctly hear the clicking sound when pressed. Next, let's test the D-pad. Surprisingly, the D-pad actually incorporates. The D-pad actually uses a dome switch, not conductive rubber. Let's take a look at the front of the device. The X, Y, A, and B buttons use conductive rubber, but the D-pad employs a dome switch. The dome switch's actuation force feels quite light. It's pretty comfortable to press, certainly not inferior to the alternative. I personally find the conductive rubber to be somewhat inferior. Additionally, the shoulder buttons feel just a little bit stiff. They utilize micro switches, which provide a different tactile sensation compared to a dome switch, and a dome switch was also implemented on the bottom. So, when considering the overall hand feel, it's quite good when held. Uh, and now, let's try it out. And what about its weight? That's our usual segment, isn't it? It's 269.5 grams. That's actually quite good for its weight. Compared to the Mini, it's roughly the same size as the Weibo Mini. Let's take a look. We'll compare its size against this device here. You can clearly see that it's noticeably bigger than the Mini, but when compared to the Fit, it's definitely a whole size smaller, quite a bit smaller in fact. The Fit feels rather large in hand. And now if we compare it to the Switch Lite, we can see that it's also just a little bit, a tiny bit smaller than the Switch Lite. It feels considerably smaller. The RPG2, when held, truly feels like it's just the right size, and it's certainly not overly large. This here is the Trimoy, and it's merely a tiny bit larger than the Trimoy. On the top, we can see there's a power button and volume controls. At the bottom, we can see there's a TF card slot and also a multifunctional Type-C port, which should support DP video output. There's also an audio jack. Looking at the back, we can observe that the design has really large cutouts. The air intake vent, as we can see, is quite substantial, and the exhaust vent is located at the top. Furthermore, akin to what other manufacturers offer, this device also incorporates a small ergonomic grip. When cradled in your hand, the tactile experience is notably pleasing, conveying a sense of thoughtful design. Moving on to its technical specifications, the screen is a 5.5-inch 1080p display, boasting a 60 Hz refresh rate utilizing LED technology. Screen. Oh, and it's not an LCD, it's equipped with 8 GB of RAM, which is quite impressive to see it reach that 8 GB capacity. As for the battery, let's check if it's specified. It's not, but it has a 5000 mAh capacity. The peak charging power is 27 watts. Let's go ahead and power it on, and we can discuss the rest of the details as it starts up. So, let's turn it on now. Alright, here we go. I'm really curious about the feel of this screen. Next, let me introduce you to its processor. The processor is actually the let's go ahead and select these options. Regarding the processor, it's called the J2 Gen 2, which is actually a throttled version of the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, meaning its performance is not as good as the regular 8 Gen 2. Kind of situation it is in a moment, we can see it's quite fast. Let's use the Android desktop. Okay, we're in. Let's take a look at the screen's performance. I feel like this screen is. There are no black borders on the display, and it seems to feature a seamless integrated glass design, a unibody build. Uh, It feels quite refined, don't you think? What do you all think? Now let's just directly dive into game testing. I've already spoken quite a bit. I'll just quickly import the games and we can officially get started. All right, we are now officially powered on and all the games and emulators have already been installed. Let's begin by examining the screen's performance. Despite being an LED display, I want to check for any screen flickering. As you can see, there's absolutely none. Lower quality screens sometimes exhibit flickering, but this one is clear. We also notice that by pulling down the quick settings panel, you can manually adjust various options, such as the trigger input mode and other settings. You can turn the joystick light on or off as needed. Additionally, you have full control over both the performance settings and the fan operation. Now, without further ado, let's dive straight into some intensive testing. We'll begin by checking out the game streaming capabilities. Let's evaluate its game streaming performance. Let's start with our old classic. All right, our game streaming test is upon us, featuring our good old friend Black Myth Wukong. First, observe the latency at the top. Wow. Look, 2 milliseconds, 3 milliseconds, a maximum of 4 milliseconds of latency. And for the frame rate, since this screen only supports a maximum of 60 frames per second, it's currently running at its peak, only able to display up to 60 frames per second. And it's a 1080p display. Oh, where did you suddenly appear from? Let's take care of him first. And just now, during the combat, I observed that the latency didn't seem to fluctuate much at all. It really looks like the J2 Gen 2 performs quite well when it comes to game streaming. Now I'll go and find another enemy to show you. Alright, let's just take care of him first. Okay, regarding game streaming, you should have a general idea of the performance by now. This means that using this device for game streaming is very comfortable and enjoyable. Game streaming works flawlessly, with absolutely no issues. As for the latency, based on all the devices I've tested, this one boasts the lowest latency. Let me demonstrate it for you once more. I'm currently engaged in a battle. First, there's no decrease in frame rate whatsoever, and the latency consistently stays around 2 to 3 milliseconds. Okay, we've covered this section thoroughly. Let's move on and explore other aspects. This appears to be King of Fighters, a PS1 game. The experience of playing King of Fighters on the PS1 feels quite consistent, just as it typically would. Now let's go ahead and check what multiplier setting we're currently using. PS1 games are totally playable, there are no problems at all. This is running at 5x resolution, but even at 10x it would be the same. Just look at the frame rate in the upper right corner. The system's usage is relatively low. Playing arcade games like this on this device feels, quite decent. However, the D-pad on the left, to be honest. The D-pad is a bit small, but the buttons on the right side are decent. The X, Y, A, and B buttons have a good amount of spacing between them. This prevents you from accidentally hitting other buttons when pressing them with your thumb. It's just that the D-pad is slightly on the smaller side. That's the scenario with PS1 games. Let's move on to other titles like God of War on the PSP. I'm certain many of you who have followed reviews over the past 2 or 3 years have frequently encountered this. We consistently utilize God of War on the PSP for testing Joge's devices. So. And that's how the saying Joge's eternal rival came to be. Today, when we're testing PSP games, we're using God of War on the PSP. I just noticed it was running very smoothly. The top right corner consistently showed maximum frames. Let's see what multiplier I had set earlier. It was 4x. We're going to crank that directly up to 8x, straight to 8x. Let's increase it to 8x and see how it performs. We can see that even at 8x, it runs very smoothly. PSP game emulation is quite mature, but I messed up the controls just now and got instantly killed. Let's get back to it. Regarding what I was just mentioning, we observed that it was already boosted to 8x. There are no problems at all. After all, it's a J2 Gen 2 processor, so playing PSP games is incredibly easy. Alright, let's explore other options. Since we're equipped with this J2 Gen 2 processor, it means there's a PC emulator, and we absolutely must give that a try. This particular game is Control, which was quite popular recently. Alright, regarding this particular segment, let's take a closer look. The opening cutscene plays flawlessly, no issues whatsoever. If you observe the bottom left, you'll notice that during the cutscene, both the CPU and GPU utilization are essentially at their peak. We can now see that. The power consumption hovers around 7 watts, perhaps a little higher, but it doesn't seem to have hit its peak, feeling rather typical. Now, I'll proceed to turn on the fan. Very well, let's fast forward through this initial part and jump directly into the actual game to see how it performs. The J2 Gen 2 PC emulator should indeed handle it proficiently. The drivers are quite mature now. Alright, we're now entering the game screen. Let's give it a try. It feels like these button controls aren't set up correctly. We'll just have to make do with this button layout for now, just for a bit. Let's step outside to check what the current frame rate is. Indoors right now, it appears that the CPU and GPU are almost entirely utilized, yet the frame rate is only around 30 FPS? Oh, this button mapping. I haven't set up this button mapping, but it's incorrect right now. Anyway, we're just taking a quick look. I won't adjust the button mapping now. Let's head outside. Okay, we're outside. Let's see what frame rate the outdoor scene can achieve. Currently, the frame rate is hovering around 30 frames per second. When I previously tested this using another device, it was able to consistently reach between 60 and 70 frames per second, and at times it even managed to push past 80 frames per second. It can even reach around 100 frames per second. The performance level of this J2 Gen 2 is indeed considerably lower than that of the G3 Gen 3. You can see it can only manage around 30 frames right now, and I've already activated high performance mode. Before, when I was just cruising around with the G3, it was a completely different story. Gen 3, this J2 Gen 2, its performance level is likely just this. Since the button mapping is incorrect, let's just briefly examine it. Anyway, it offers an average performance, but it should still be playable, indeed playable. Regarding PC emulators, the J2 Gen 2 should certainly be able to handle them, which is acceptable. Let's explore some other things. We'll hold off on further examining this for now.